Right now, somewhere out there, a rider is on their horse, a horse they believe is completely sound, and 73% of the time, according to researchers who actually checked, that horse is lame. Not dramatically, not obviously, not in a way that makes you pull up and call the vet. Just quietly, steadily, every single ride, and the horse isn't telling you because it can't, because millions of years of evolution made sure of that. This video is about how horses hide pain so effectively that even experienced riders miss it, and more importantly, what you can actually look for to finally catch it. Most people think a horse in pain looks injured. It doesn't. It looks lazy. It looks grumpy. It looks like it's testing you or being difficult. And that mislabeling, that gap between what you see and what's actually happening, is exactly how the pain stays hidden. We're going to walk through what the science actually says, give you a real set of things to watch for, and by the end, you'll understand why one specific behavior your horse does is something almost no one realizes is a pain signal. I'll get to that one last because it changes everything. Let's start with why your horse is so good at hiding it in the first place. Horses are prey animals. In the wild, showing weakness meant becoming a target. So over thousands of years, they evolved to mask pain. Not just emotionally, but physically. And this is where it gets genuinely surprising because it goes way beyond a brave face. When a horse is hurting in one leg, it doesn't just try to look normal, it actually re-engineers how it moves. It shortens its stride, it reduces how high it lifts its feet, it lowers the range of motion in its back. It shifts how long each limb stays on the ground to spread the load more evenly. Your horse is actively compensating in real time, every step, so that the asymmetry is small enough that you won't notice. That's not a metaphor, that's biomechanics. The horse isn't being stoic, it's running a constant physical calculation to fool you, and it's very, very good at it. So good, in fact, that the numbers are almost hard to believe. Dr. Sue Dyson and a team of scientists applied a pain behavior checklist to 60 riding horses in the UK. The horses were given lameness exams and checked for saddle fit, then assessed while being ridden by their regular riders, all of whom believed their horses were sound. The study found that 73% of those horses showed subtle, intermittent lameness in one or more legs. 73%. These weren't neglected horses. These were horses in regular work with owners who cared about them. A separate survey of 506 sports horses presumed sound by their owners found 47% were lame or showed other clinical signs consistent with musculoskeletal pain. So across multiple studies, the picture is consistent. Roughly half to nearly 3/4 of horses their owners believe are fine are actually in pain. Statistically, this video is probably about your horse. And here's the thing that makes this even harder. Riders, regardless of their skill level and experience, consistently miss the behavioral signs that reflect musculoskeletal pain. Many riders learn to ride on horses that already exhibit these signs. So there's a generalized acceptance that these behaviors are just normal for horses. We've been trained to not see it. So let's change that. The first place to look is the face. And I mean that literally there is a documented, scientifically validated pain face for horses, and most owners have never heard of it. Researchers identified 6 specific facial action units that indicate pain. Stiffly backwards ears, orbital tightening, tension above the eye area, prominent strained chewing muscles, a mouth strain with a pronounced chin, and strained nostrils with a flattening of the profile. This is called the Horse Grimace Scale, and it was developed by analyzing horses before and after painful procedures to find what consistently changed. Each of those 6 things has a specific look, and you can learn to read them. Walk through them one by one. Stiffly backwards ears, not the casual, relaxed flick of an ear following a sound, but both ears held flat and rigid toward the pole. Tension above the eye area, a kind of furrowed, wrinkled look in the skin above the eye that isn't there when the horse is comfortable. Strained chewing muscles. You can actually see the jaw muscles bulging and tightening, even when the horse isn't chewing anything. A strained mouth with a pronounced chin. The lips pull tight, the chin juts slightly. Strained nostrils. The edges of the nostril flatten and pull, losing the soft, rounded shape of a relaxed horse. And then there's orbital tightening. Shifts in blink-related action units have been linked to pain and stress in horses, but orbital tightening, the tensing and partial closing of the eye itself, is the single most consistent pain signal across nearly every species researchers have studied. Mice, rats, rabbits, cats, sheep, ferrets, horses. Every species has its own grimace scale, and orbital tightening shows up in all of them. In horses, the difference is visible once you know what you're looking for. A comfortable horse has a soft, round, open eye. A horse in pain has an eye that looks tight, slightly squinted, worried. That one feature alone carries more diagnostic weight than almost anything else on the face. And here's something that makes this even more interesting. Half and full blink movements are recognized indicators of pain and stress. But as micro-expressions, their subtle, fine-grained nature makes them easily missed by the naked eye and only discernible through frame-by-frame video inspection. Which means there is pain data in your horse's face moving faster than you can consciously see in real time. Pull out your phone, film your horse during a ride, and watch it back. Slow it down. You might see things in a 10-second clip that you've completely missed across months of riding. Now the face is one layer, but there's a whole body checklist that goes even further. And this is where the research gets genuinely remarkable. Dr. Sue Dyson and colleagues developed the Ridden Horse Pain Ethogram, a catalog of 24 behaviors associated with pain in the ridden horse. The central question behind it, are we punishing horses for being in pain? Dyson spent years teaching horse owners how to recognize pain signals while diagnosing horses formerly labeled as bad. The Ethogram was built through a 6-phase study spanning 3 years and more than 400 horses. The behaviors on this list aren't obscure or hard to find. The majority of them are at least 10 times more likely to be seen in lame horses compared with non-lame horses. And there's a specific threshold that matters. A horse without pain shows an average of 2 to 3 of these 24 behaviors, usually in situations of natural tension, like a new arena or a fresh wind. A horse with musculoskeletal pain shows 8 or more. That threshold of 8 behaviors has been tested repeatedly in Dyson studies. It catches lame horses about 86% of the time and correctly clears sound horses about 80% of the time. Not a replacement for a vet's clinical exam, but real diagnostic weight. A marked reduction in ethogram scores after resolution of lameness using diagnostic anesthesia proves a causal relationship between pain and the behaviors. In other words, when vets numb the pain, the behaviors dropped. This isn't correlation, it's causation, and it's been proven. The behaviors include things like repeated head tossing, ears pinned back for more than 5 seconds, tail swishing, stumbling, reluctance to move forward, and opening the mouth and separating the teeth. The most common ones observed include pinning the ears for at least 5 seconds, staring intently for at least 5 seconds, and dragging the back feet or stumbling repeatedly. These are things you've probably seen. Maybe you've seen them today. And if you've been riding long enough, you've probably heard someone describe a horse doing these things as being naughty, testing the rider, or having an attitude. That's the part that matters most, and it's the emotional gut of everything we've covered so far. Horses that resist commands are often labeled as problem horses, and horses that don't perform according to an owner's or trainer's expectation are often exposed to a more intense and sometimes punitive training regimen. The horse that won't go forward, the horse that pins its ears when you put the saddle on, the one that naps at the gate or refuses without any obvious reason, the one people call dishonest. These behaviors are on the pain ethogram. Most of them are at least 10 times more common in horses that are hurting. And when we label them as a training problem and respond with pressure, we're not fixing a behavior issue. We're punishing an animal for trying to communicate that something is wrong. This isn't about blame. Most owners who've done this didn't know. The research that makes this clear is relatively recent, and even professionals have missed it for decades. Riders, irrespective of their skill level and experience, have shown a lack of recognition of the behavioral signs that may reflect musculoskeletal pain. The point isn't that you've been doing something wrong. The point is that now you have a different lens to look through. When your horse does something that used to read as attitude, the first question now is, where does this show up on the checklist? If this is hitting close to home, If you're thinking about a specific horse, a specific behavior you've been dealing with, drop it in the comments. Seriously, tell me what you've been seeing. Because the comment section on this kind of video becomes a resource, and other horse owners need to hear what you've been experiencing. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. There's a lot more coming on this channel about understanding what your horse is actually telling you, and you don't want to miss it. Now here's the thing I told you I was saving for last. 2 of the 24 behaviors on the Ethogram were never seen in sound horses. Not occasionally, never. More than 50% of horses demonstrated gait abnormalities. But these 2 specific signals, they belong exclusively to horses in pain. The first is exposure of the sclera, the white of the eye. When a horse shows the whites of its eyes under saddle, not from a spook, not from a startle, but as a sustained expression, that is a pain signal that essentially doesn't appear in a comfortable horse. The second is bucking or kicking out behind. The horse that bucks isn't being dramatic. The horse that kicks out backward mid-stride isn't disrespecting you. In the research, those 2 behaviors were never recorded in a sound horse. Never. So if you've been told your horse just has a buck in him or kicks out when he's fresh, that's worth a conversation with your vet. One honest thing before we close, research found that even 30 minutes of face-to-face training was not sufficient for observers to effectively learn to apply the Grimace scale reliably. Reading pain accurately takes real practice and real expertise, and there are limits to what the Grimace scale can catch. The Horse Grimace Scale scores were not influenced by the presence or severity of gastric ulcers, and further studies investigating the use of different pain scales in horses with conditions like gastric ulcer syndrome are still needed. Different types of pain hide in different places, and no single tool catches everything. Your vet has diagnostic tools, nerve blocks, imaging, objective gait analysis that you simply don't have access to from the saddle. So your job isn't to diagnose your horse. Your job is to notice, catch the tight eye, count the behaviors on the checklist during your next ride, film a few minutes and watch it back in slow motion, and then bring what you found to your vet with specifics, with video, with a count of how many behaviors you saw in 10 minutes. You become the early warning system. They make the call. That combination, your eyes and their tools, is how pain stops hiding. Because the horse that's been labeled lazy, grumpy, naughty, or difficult might just be the horse that's been trying the hardest to tell you something, in the only language it has. If you want to go deeper on reading your horse's body language, not just pain, but mood, stress, and connection, there's a video right here that covers exactly that. Watch it next. It picks up right where this one left off.